Hello and good morning. Welcome to another episode of The Legal Zone, where we tackle injustice. We have another amazing program today lined up for you. We have a special guest. Her name is Taisha Bryan. Good morning, Miss Bryan.
Good morning.
She's going to tell us about her injustice that she's going through with the legal system. As usual, we have Mr. John Salati. Hello, Mr. Salati.
Good morning, Mr. Phillips. Good morning indeed.
Good to see you.
Be back.
Yeah. Dr. Cheney, how are you?
Okay,
You ready to rock and roll?
absolutely.
All righty. So before we get into this, I want to go over a simple concept that I'm sure everyone has heard of before. It is a contract. Everyone can see that? You all can see that?
Yes.
So a contract is an agreement between private parties creating mutual obligations that's enforceable by law. That's a contract, and we're all familiar with contracts. What is a contract, or what makes a contract? We know that there has to be an offer. There has to be an acceptance of that offer. There has to be consideration for some sort of exchange of value for something. That's consideration, time, money, effort, whatever. Capacity, that just means you have to be of legal age and sound mind. And there has to be legality, or the contract must be enforceable. An unenforceable contract is nothing more than a promise. So all those people out there, they're wondering whether or not they have a contract. Well, the question is it enforceable? If it's not, then it's just a promise. There's nothing that you can do. Does a contract need to be in writing? The answer to that is no. Not all contracts have to be written down. When you go to the barber shop, get your hair done, you don't sit there and say, hold on, let's write this down. You say, I need a haircut. How much does it cost? Okay, let's do it. So not all contracts need to be in writing. Performance on the agreement can create a contract. So why do I talk about that now? Well, this particular case is going to deal with some sort of agreement or contract, even though it's a family matter. So that's why I opened it. So without any more delay, Miss Taisha, what's going on in your world?
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to say I've been going through this matter probably more than about 3 years, fighting, trying to get my daughter back. And this is, I know some people want to say because of the pandemic, this was before the pandemic. I've been trying to obtain and get my daughter back with me and her other siblings. So let me start from the beginning, just to give you a little history on me and Tashel's father. I met Tashel's father in the midst of me going through a process of a divorce. Mr. Clark knew I was married upon us dating and everything. Make a long story short, I decided to work on my marriage, back on my marriage after me and Mr. Clark decided to go separate ways. I found out I was pregnant, told Mr. Clark, which my husband at the time, he knew that it could not be his because there was no way I was only with Mr. Clark. I wasn't going back and forth between the two men. So we had already established, Mr. Clark did want to get a DNA test, and I told him upon the child being born, he could. What happened is when my daughter was born, I was still legally married. The courts told us that Mr. Clark could not be seen legally as her father. Mr. Clark got upset and was mad because he wanted her last name to be his. We went to court. Mr. Clark asked me, could I go to court and see if it's some way that we can be able to get him on there? I told him that my husband had to give up his rights and come to court. That's what I was told by the courts, that both of us would have to give up, well, not me per se, but my ex-husband my husband at the time would have to be in agreement to what's going on because he is legally my husband, and under DC law, they said when you're still legally married and a child is born, regardless if that's not the biological father, he's known as the biological father because of marriage. So make a long story short, we went to court. Mr. Clark asked to be put on child support. We established that the weekends, we made our own situation on the weekends, or however we did getting her back and forth. The courts didn't do that. Mainly was the courts made him known as the father and had her last name. We hyphenated it. He wanted the last name to be his directly, and I told him no, I would be in agreement to hyphenate the name. So that's what we did and put her on the birth certificate. Now, Tashelle, I was always the primary care holder of Tashelle. She always lived with me, even me being married and everything. She was always with me and my children and my family. Mr. Clark got her on weekends, especially when she was young. Of course, that didn't happen until she was able to get a little older. Mr. Clark, this would be his first child. He never had any children prior. So he didn't know anything about raising a child, taking care of a child, or anything like that. I had to literally teach Mr. Clark how to change a diaper, what needs to be done. I can say I thank God for his grandmother. His grandmother was one of the people who actually was a tremendous help in his life with raising our daughter. Now, fast forward to Tasha.
Before we fast forward, so the setup at the time that she was born, she was with you. And then when she got older, she started going to Mr. Clark.
On the weekends.
On the weekends. And
every other weekend. That was her daily routine was every other weekend. We would sometimes change holidays and stuff like that, but the original agreement was he would get her every other weekend, especially once she started school. It was, let's say if they was out on a Monday, he would keep her till that Monday and just return her.
Was he paying child support?
Yes, he was paying child support.
How much?
$720.
Okay, and that was something that you all agreed upon?
No, the courts told him that's what he had to pay.
Okay, so
that's not something I agreed on anything. I never wanted to put Mr. Clark on child support. Mr. Clark asked me to put him on child support. That's what he asked.
And the court did.
So that's what we did. So when that happened, like I said, Tashelle's getting older. She was living with me and my siblings. Mr. Clark, I did a career move, and I asked Mr. Clark, because my daughter is Dominican and Black. Originally, when she was younger, she couldn't speak English as well as her brother. Now, mind you, her brother is a year under her. So he stopped speaking it because she was speaking Spanglish, and people in my side of the family could not really understand everything she was saying as a toddler. So we said we would pick up on it once she got a little older. So at this time of me taking a career move, I asked Mr. Clark, instead of allowing Tashelle to be with her other siblings residing with my mother at the time, did you want to take a year and have her to pick up on her speaking Spanish and get more time with her and her get more comfortable with his family? Because my family is very oriented. We do a lot of trips. We do a lot of things. We're always having events. My mother is the baby out of 9 children. And so that tells you my family is very, very big. We all of them have children, and we are close knitted. So we come together, and Mr. Clark has even contested to that in court that my family is very family oriented versus his family is very small. It's not that many of them, at least not over here, close knitted. They don't all come together like me and my family do. Nonetheless, that was Tashelle's routine, as being with my family more. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to get more time with him, his family, her get more a sense of who they are and how they do things in their culture. Because I'm very big on broadening my kids' horizon. I don't want them to just stay small and minute and just what we have to offer. I want them to be offered all aspects, all things in life that they can.
How many children do you have in all now?
I have 4.
4, and that's including the child that you have.
Tashelle, yes.
So Tyshell has 3 siblings
Mhm.
at home with you.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. Tashelle has a younger sibling under her. When I chose to go back to my ex-husband, me and him conceived another child, and they are only 9 months apart. Tashelle and her brother are very close. I call them the Doublemint twins because they literally act like they're twins. They've always been synced together. They've always did things together. And this whole situation has put a toll on their relationship in a major way. That's really one of my biggest concerns and problems because I didn't think that Tashelle would be gone but a year. And this has turned into more than a year. So it's really a problem. I've had to explain to my kids, and my kids have cried like why Tashelle is not home with us. So it's just different things I've had to have conversation with them and letting them know, like, and they don't really understand the legal side because when I came back originally from the career move, I grabbed and came and got them. I took 6 months to a year almost, got me established with a new job here and got a place. But even when I came back, I still was coming to visit them where they were staying at. I was still buying them food, clothes, and supporting them while they were living in a different area. But
Okay,
until
let's go to the career change. So
right,
you gave Tyshell to Mr. Clark with the
Mhm.
agreement that your daughter would be with him while you were doing this career change. How long were you on the
right. For one, it was supposed to be a year. Things happened where things were happening at my mother's house, let me say that. And my oldest daughter is old enough to understand. So my daughter called me one day and said, Mom, things are not what it needs to be. And what that means to her is it's not the living that they're used to and accustomed to. And I made a decision as a mother at that time, who am I to try to pursue a career when these kids did not ask to be here? So I immediately got back on a plane. So I was literally probably gone maybe 30 days.
A month, okay.
Yeah, 30 days. And I came back and I was like, forget everything else I was trying to do. That if I wanted to do that, like I told them, I'll do that when y'all get grown. But I'm going to sacrifice the time because y'all didn't ask to be here. I placed you here in this world.
So did you let Mr. Clark know that?
I did. When I came back, I told Mr. Clark I was home. I was back. I told him I didn't want to immediately get her. I wanted to make sure that I was financially stable and able to get all of them at the same time. I wanted to get a job again and make sure that everything was what it needs to be as how I was supporting them from day one. Mr. Clark seemed like at the time that he was adamant and okay with it. It was supposed to be, she'll be back with you. And upon, I think it was the last week, right before kids go to school, he got her for the week, it was supposed to be just for the week and him returning her back to me. He all of a sudden flipped and called me and my mother and was like, oh, Tashelle will not be coming back with you guys. Out of nowhere. And it mainly, I felt it was because of child support, because before Tashelle coming back to him, he asked me, so what is going to happen with child support? I said, what do you mean what's going to happen with child support? I said, now at this time, Mr. Clark had just got married, just had a baby. This all happened in the same year of him getting my daughter. In the same year of him getting our daughter, he became engaged, and the engagement wasn't not even 6 months. They got married abruptly. Anybody I can bring to the courts will tell you he got married to this woman in a blink of an eye, where his own family was not at the wedding. His own family did not agree to the wedding because they felt like the woman was asking him to get married because of a green card. But nonetheless, I have nothing to do with that. I don't know nothing about that. It's none of my business. But my reason for saying that is Mr. Clark states the claim that nothing has changed while he's had our daughter the whole time. And you did not take the time out to have, take the time that I felt as though was supposed to be focusing on our daughter. You went from you and your grandmother living together and your grandmother supporting you with our daughter to you moved your grandmother out, moved the girl into the home. The grandmother and the girl kept getting into it. So you moved the grandmother out. Then you and the wife was supposed to be there. And in the midst of that, you got her pregnant in the same year of y'all getting married. And my daughter had to experience all of these new things, which my daughter came and told me, Mom, Dad don't love you no more. I have a new mommy. So I was confused.
When you went to him and said, hey, I'm back now, I want my daughter back, he said she won't be coming back.
Right. He told me he will see me in court, and which the agreement was, I told him, I said, if you're worried about child support, I do know you just had a child. I am sympathetic. I understand what it means to have a child and what it takes to having a child. I told him I will wait till the end of the year because, as you know, school is like in August. So I said he had just had the child, I think it was either August or October he had the child, October, I believe. I said, if you would like me to, I'll wait until December to put you back on child support. I won't just pick it right back up. So you'll have time to get your affairs in order. Mr. Clark said, okay, supposedly. That was the agreement.
This was 2019 or 18?
This was, I can't even be very frank with like what the date, I just know it probably was 2018 when we had this discussion. And then I had another discussion in 2019 again with him, like, do you not remember the conversation that we had prior to this whole situation?
And he was just saying no the whole time.
Right. He was always saying no.
And then that's when you found me and we had to file motions with the court.
I felt like I needed help because I've been going through this for more than a year. And every time the judge was sending us to mediation. They were sending us, and we did the mediation. They were sending us to counseling, parents counseling. We did all those things. And the problem is like I told the judge, we're never going to see eye to eye. I feel as though Mr. Clark is a good father. I'm never going to take that from him. I've said that on countless occasions. Do I feel like he's a prick? And some other words? Yes, I do. Do we co-parent totally different? Yes, but I do not take him from being a father. Out of any of my children, father, is he a good father? Yes.
So
do we see eye to eye?
So basically in 2018, you asked for the child back. He said no, and to this day, you still don't have her.
Right.
All right, I want to show a quick clip of this deposition, and this is what he says, and I want you to clear it up to see whether or not this is true, because we haven't even had a conversation on this part, but just he's talking about how your relationship started. All right, you all can see that.
I jumped that into to perform that question.
All right, go ahead.
Well, what do you want to know next?
What happened? After the party, continue with the story.
After the party, I saw Miss Bryan at church more frequently. I was involved in the church doing the media ministry. I also, it was a better time of the summer months. So, there was a lot more involvement with the family. So, I would see her more often than not at the church, and we got to talking, and, we went out a few times.
Okay. So at this point, did anything change from the time you asked your friend Jerry about her?
Between her, yeah, I mean, obviously we're adults. We spoke. You know, she told me she was divorced and pending a separation, pending a divorce, and you know, she had a mutual interest in me as I did in her. We weren't looking for anything too complicated, just companionship. And from then, you know, we just, you know, spent time with each other. So.
I guess what I'm confused about is you had a conversation with your good buddy that led you to the church,
Mhm.
and he told you to leave her alone. You did that, but then something changed to make you say, well, you know what, I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm going after her regardless of what my friend told me not to do. Is that?
Yeah, a year had passed. A year had passed, and
And you're mischaracterizing his testimony, and I'm also going
Yeah.
to take the form of
Yeah,
that.
he just said yes. He just said yes. So because a year had passed, but she still had children though, and she was still going through something though. So what changed is what I'm trying to understand that would lead you to not pursue it in 2010, but then change your mind and pursue it in 2011. I'm not understanding.
Objection again to the form of the question.
So try to help me to understand.
what is it exactly you want to understand, sir?
What happened? What changed your mind?
Time had transpired, and kind of having a conversation with Miss Bryan, she expressed just as much of an interest in me as I did in her.
So in that scene, he said that his best friend told him not to approach you because you were married and you had children, and so he didn't. But then the next year he did, but you were still married and you still had children. So I was trying to get him to say, well, what changed your mind? But he wouldn't. What was going on there? Can you shed some more light as to the beginning of your relationship?
When Mr. Clark first originally met me, 2010, originally I was sick and I almost died. So I was like 90 pounds. So they thought I had cancer. I wound up having a tumor growing on my right ovary. I wound up having to have emergency surgery. I lost a lot of weight in that time. And I was, like I said, pending going through a divorce at the same time while I was sick and having to raise 2 children at the time. Mr. Clark didn't get to see me, but he knew who I was at the time. So when I did start coming back around, because I was getting better, Mr. Clark was known who I was, and my cousin told him who I was, that I had a lot going on. And it really wasn't mostly about my marriage because I was already separated. It was that I was sick and trying to get better and trying to get back on my feet and back out into the world because I had not been out in the world for almost like a year. I had to sit down and be home and had to have aides and people take care of me. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that, but that is something that happened to me around 2010.
Okay.
After me meeting Mr. Clark, of course, I gained my weight back. Let me say that. So when he seen me, he originally seen me in the church with my husband. He inquired about me and they told him I was, you know, even though me and my husband was going through our divorce, we still were church goers and believed in our children going to church and things like that. Mr. Clark, when I met him, I was introduced as that's my cousin's best friend. And they went to school with each other. We went to an event after another occasion of being together, like at the church and stuff. We all went to a gathering. Mr. Clark actually offered to give me a ride home one day. And my family was trying to actually hook Mr. Clark up with a cousin of mine, and I was too. Mr. Clark, on the way home, told me he was interested in me and he had been inquiring about me, but he didn't want to come off straightforward because he was told to be cautious, I guess, and because I was going through something. And he just wanted to know if I was done going through what I was going through or what the case was. And I just explained to him that I was just getting better, and I had already filed for a divorce.
Did you
And I
say,
was legally separated.
you said he knew your husband
Yeah, he had met my husband.
before he started talking to you?
Yeah, he had met him.
Okay,
That's one of the reasons why my ex-husband does not like him,
okay,
because
so
he knew who we were before we started dating.
listen to
I
what
didn't know who he was, but he knew who I was.
listen to what he says under oath about that same question.
No.
Wait.
Yeah, we talked at church, at little family gatherings and cookouts. I mean, it was a summer that had a lot of little events. So we saw each other on more than one of these events.
Did you get a chance to meet her husband?
No.
You never met her husband?
I mean, I've met him. Yeah, I've met him, but I never met him during 2010 or 2011. I didn't really meet him until 20. You still there?
Yeah, you said you didn't really meet him until when?
2012, I want to say.
So was he being truthful?
He definitely was not. I mean, I could call my ex-husband on the phone now, he'd tell you that's a lie. Now, did they formally meet like, hey, this is Mr. Clark, this is Mr. Johnson? No, it wasn't that. But did Mr. Clark know who we were as a whole couple? Yes, he did. And I have more than one witness that'll tell you. And he knew who we were directly. He knew we were together and we were married. And that's one of the reasons, like I said, my ex-husband does not like Mr. Clark at all. Does he feel like Mr. Clark? We are both in agreement that Mr. Clark is a good father, but does he like Mr. Clark as a whole? No, because he feel like Mr. Clark is sneaky and he preyed on us. That's what my ex-husband, his words. He feel like he already seen you and knew we were going through something, and he waited until afterwards when we all, listen, we come from a church that is like a family church. So I may not say, hey, this is Mr. Johnson, but we're all in a group session and all of us are going out together and all of us know who everyone, okay, you're Jay's cousin or you're a such and such family member and we're all together. Just because you wasn't directly saying, hey, y'all wasn't sitting having a conversation or powwow and dap each other up, shook each other hand. You knew who Mr. Johnson was. Mr. Johnson did not know who you were.
Mr. Johnson's husband.
Right. He did not know who Mr. Clark was. He just knew that he was Jerry's friend. Let me just say that he didn't know like, oh yeah, that he was interested in me or anything like that at the time of meeting him.
And you said that your husband thinks that he preyed on you. Do you think that?
To a certain extent, when he tells me how Mr. Clark also looked me up. He Googled me. Before dating me, he told me he Googled me. And I asked him why. I said, I wanted to see what popped up and what came up. And what I see is that you model. You do a lot of modeling. That's the first thing he told me that he did. So I was like, okay, I mean, I always knew Mr. Clark, for one, he's a book person. He's always been into books. But Mr. Clark definitely, I feel like, had a lot to do with preying on me because he knew who I was before I even knew who he was. I didn't even know who he was. And when I got introduced, I'm one of those people, I come into a room and I don't know someone, especially where it's, let's say, I know majority of everyone. I will insert like, hi, how are you? Who is this person? How do y'all know each other and who's everyone? Because I want to know who's all in the room. If something happens, I like to know who's all in the room, who I'm intertwining my energy with or anything like that. So I was originally told that is my cousin's best friend. And because I was gone for a year, because I was sick, I had lost touch with what actually was going on in a lot of events and a lot of things. So when I came back on the scene, they were telling me, well, this is Mr. Clark, he came to the church a couple times. You just didn't see him, but he was there. That's what I was told. And I was like,
listen how he describes the relationship as far as the length of it.
Actually interacted with her. Matter of fact, whatever we had going on was during the summer of 2011. So by the time Christmas was there, it was well over. So, I mean, by Christmas of 2011, I did know she was pregnant, but I didn't know any further details beyond that.
Okay, so I'm really confused now. So 2010, you saw her, inquired. Jerry said, hey, man, she got kids. She's going through some stuff. She needs space. 2011, he has this party at his house. You start talking to her. And then by September 2011, it was all over.
Yes.
So how long would you say your relationship lasted from the time you met her or first introduced yourself to her at Jerry's house to September 2011? What was the time frame?
2, maybe 3 months at most.
I'm sorry, I thought you said 2 months. Can you say that again? I couldn't.
2, maybe 3 months at most.
So the whole love affair lasted for 2 to 3 months?
Yes.
When I hear that, it kind of seems like he was preying on you.
well, I'm gonna say this, Mr. Clark, meeting him, the reason why our relationship ended abruptly, because Mr. Clark, I planned an event for him for his birthday. And Mr. Clark showed a whole nother side to me that I wanted to have nothing to do with. And I have at least 5 people that can say Mr. Clark acted like a fool in public. And it was his words were, he drunk too much and he has never drunk that much in his life. So he could not, I guess, control his emotions. But Mr. Clark acted very obsessive, very controlling. I could not speak to another man in public. Another man asked me where the restroom was. He told me at the end of the night and my friends that I had to be asking the dude. We had to be exchanging each other's number to go sleep with each other or something like that. I mean, he just acted really deranged and crazy out of nowhere the whole night. So I ended things with him abruptly. Mr. Clark still, I have many witnesses, still came after me. Still, he sent flowers, bouquets, dozens of roses, trying to win me back. I went like kind of off the grid for a week after I broke up with him. And he went reaching out to my cousin Jerry and other ones in the family asking where my whereabouts was and what is going on, because he wanted to know where I was at, because from that night of him acting an ass and showing his ass, I didn't go home with him. Mr. Clark told me he threatened to leave me out Arundel Mills. And I told him I have never been assaulted in my life like that, where a man tells me he's going to leave me somewhere. So I told him, you can leave. You can go ahead and leave. I'm going to find my way home. And you don't have to worry about where I'll be at or what's going to happen after this conversation. And I meant that. The difference is Mr. Clark thought I was playing. And he followed me, thought I was going to get in the car with him, told me I needed to speak with him now. And I just told him no. I make a long story short, I wound up going home with someone else. They gave me, my cousins and her fiance gave me a ride home. And I went home. I didn't go straight home because Mr. Clark couldn't find me. But nonetheless, as I wound up back home, and Mr. Clark begged me to get back with him, and I told him no. In the midst of Mr. Clark still trying to reach out to me and get back with me, I decided to get back and work on my marriage with my husband. So that's how it literally happened. Like, me and Mr. Clark were dating for, I wouldn't say 2 to 3 months. It was probably a little longer than that. But I know me and Mr. Clark had an off and on relationship, even all the way up until him getting married. Because right before he got married, 6 months before meeting her, he asked to be back with me. Mr. Clark has asked me to marry him even in that time, the beginning of us being together, he asked me to marry him. He said, once your divorce is legally final, we can go get married. I don't want to be with a woman who's not mine per se, because legally you're not mine. On paper, you say you belong to another man. That was his words.
Mhm.
So that was one of the things we constantly always argued about, because he wanted to make sure that he was not going into a relationship where he was being bamboozled. And I told him my intentions was never to bamboozle you, or because I didn't come for Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark came for me. I never sought out for Mr. Clark. He was looking to talk to me. So I explained to him, I'm just getting out of marriage. If I'm okay with getting married again, that's never a problem. But it was the controlling side that I seen, the obsessive side, I couldn't speak to another opposite sex of me that was mine. It was just, it became from this person that was genuinely kind and was very warming that I could speak to and talk to and have conversation with, where he just became very obsessive and possessive. And I just was like, that is not a relationship I want to go into. I'm not going to be in a relationship where I can't even be in public and have a conversation at the bar with another human being. I don't want to go in no relationship like that. And that is the signs and things that Mr. Clark showed me early on.
So you had the baby, Tyshell, you kept her,
Mhm.
and then you agreed for him to have temporary custody. But then, as we said earlier, you're in a situation now where you're fighting to get that back.
Right. And I feel as though the system has made it out to like, as if I lost custody of my child. I never lost custody of her. I gave her up. And I'm not trying to be funny, but what deems me, I had to have a conversation with my uncle, because my uncle was supposed to be on Mr. Clark's side and going to court at first, saying that he'd rather Tyshell be with her father. And I asked him, what makes me able and an okay parent to take care of 3 other children, but not okay to take care of Tyshell? I am very confused by that. I am not strung out on drugs. I own my vehicles. I don't lease, I own. I'm in the process of trying to buy a house. I am not a person who does not work multiple jobs to support my family. I have been known to work 3 jobs sometimes.
And you've
I
never,
do what I have to
never
do.
been found to be unfit, have you?
No, I've never been found to be unfit. And I'm very frank on who I am. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a social drinker. I do smoke, and that is cigarettes. I don't even smoke cigarettes that often. People tell me I shouldn't even smoke cigarettes because it's like a glass of wine I have a cigarette with. I do smoke marijuana, and I never hid that from Mr. Clark. Because I'm not a person who is a obsessive smoker. First of all, I work in the healthcare field. Let me state that. So that tells you I cannot be working 2, 3 jobs, 8-hour shifts and smoking all day. It's not possible. It's not possible for me to be working that many hours and then my job knows that I smoke. I'm sorry, it's no way I could be functional and smoke. So let me just say this, me smoking marijuana is legal, for one. Number 2 is I smoke that on my own time. Anybody that knows me can tell you that. They like, Taisha does she go to work, she does the kids, she does the event with the kids, she does that. And at the end of the night, if that's what she want to do, she leaves and go do her. It's never, oh yeah, my kids and all them in an environment where I'm just going to be smoking in front of them and this and that. I don't want that for my kids. I don't want them. That's one of the reasons a lot of people don't know. I divorced my ex-husband because he battled with drug addiction. And I didn't want my kids to be growing up in that type of environment. So after me and Mr. Clark broke up, I got back with my ex-husband for about a year, and he got hooked back on drugs, and I decided to continue on with me getting a divorce, and that's what I did.
And so we had to file, we were going back and forth with this court stuff with visitation, and we had to really push to finally get a hearing to determine whether your daughter could come back home after 3 whole years. When this started, your daughter was how old?
She was still in her toddler, coming out of her toddler years, when she was like 4 or 5.
And now she's,
Yeah, she was about 5 years old, I think.
and now she's, how old is she now?
I think she was like 5.5. Yeah, she's 9. She just turned 9.
All right, Dr. Cheney, I'm gonna turn it over to you first and then John. Do you have any questions?
Hello, Ms. Bryant.
Hello.
I have a question about, maybe I missed it.
Mhm.
What is you said Mr. Clark is into books. What's his profession, if any?
Well, when I met Mr. Clark, he was doing photography and he was taking some college courses for business and photography. When I met Mr. Clark, after us being together for a little while, Mr. Clark lost his job. So he was working off of, I guess, his whatever they was giving him. I don't know. He was given like stimulus or some type of little checks or something. Upon Tashelle being born, he didn't have a job. He didn't have a job for about at least almost 6 months to a year. And he asked me to give him time. He was going to go into the military, Army Reserve. So he did that. Then Mr. Clark asked me to give him more time. Right after him doing the Army Reserve, he decided to be a firefighter. So those are his professions that I know of him to be doing as of lately. Other than that, I don't know what he does now. But
Okay.
those are the last things I was known of.
Okay, the other couple of things that I have. Can you tell me the discussions that you all may have had about expectations and also trust?
Expectations is that Tashelle is always going to, I always try to tell him, which I don't know if he believes me or not, but I never speak down on him in front of our child. I don't feel like that's something we should do, speak ill on each other in front of kids, because I want my kids to make a decision on their own on how they feel about their parent, not for me to have influence on that situation per se. Trust. At one point in time, I did feel like me and Mr. Clark were building trust, but Mr. Clark has showed me on numerous occasions that he is not to be trusted. And when I mean numerous occasions, I think Mr. Clark mentioned about me claiming Tashelle this year. Trust was, we agreed that upon Tashelle going with him that first year when I gave him her in 2018, that I would claim her because I had her that whole year just about. He was getting her when school was about to start. So that's almost at the end of the year. Mr. Clark went ahead and claimed her anyways because he owed, just so he wouldn't have to pay the IRS back. So that's what I mean by trust has been broken on numerous occasions with Mr. Clark. So this year, I took upon myself and I claimed our daughter, which Mr. Clark did not like that. And he said, because I did not have her this year, I shouldn't have claimed her. I said, well, we can go to court and fight that, because the year you got her, you did not have her the full year. You got her at the end of the year. So it's really on who had her the most. I had her that majority of the year. So all I did was get her back on the same time that you did. That's it. So Mr. Clark and our trust has been, Mr. Clark is like night and day. 1 minute it's, I'm sorry, I love you and I care about you, I want to be with you. I'm engaged right now. And the guy I'm with right now can tell you, Mr. Clark, he has seen text message from Mr. Clark saying, when are y'all gonna be not together? I want us to be a family, da 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 da. So that's why I said Mr. Clark is all over the place.
While he's been married,
Definitely.
Yeah, but see,
he sent you those texts?
No. This before he got married. Before, because I have not had really contact with him with the whole marriage situation.
Okay.
Because it was so abruptly and everything happened so fast. It was just like, nobody even knew who she was.
Okay.
But yes.
Anything else, Dr. Cheney?
not now.
John?
I think you both have covered, the question. So I think it's time to jump into the law stuff here and see, let's dig into that and where the injustices are being played out.
Okay.
We got the factual lay of the land pretty clear.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Bryant. We have our court date, August is it the 11th? What,
Please,
it's August yes, August the 11th at 10 o'clock. And we're gonna try to get this thing back to the way it used to be.
okay,
And the strong part we have is the agreement. And he's not denying that you all agreed. So we'll talk more till then. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on.
thank you.
Alrighty.
Yes,
All
good
right.
luck.
All right, thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Alrighty. Thoughts, Dr. Janey?
What's the situation with her family and her mother, and what was going on there? Did you
When,
know?
at the time that, at what point in time? Because she has a rocky relationship with her mom.
Yeah, she said she had to come back from being away, and the mother and things weren't going right in the house, and she had to come back.
Yeah, she's had a rough,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Pretty much. That's
Salon, can you summarize the sort of the where we are legally here? Because I don't think that's, come out. Yeah, there was agreement and he won't agree to or abide by it, and then she hired you. But after that, I think the people who are listening really need to know a little bit more like what has gone on, because it seems so obvious, and yet, of course, as you know, it's not. Why are we in the situation we're in?
Right. So towards the end of 2019 is when she came to the firm for help. And this was before Mr. Clark was represented. So I had an opportunity to talk to him directly. And initially he told me that he was fine with putting things back to the way they were. But then he changed and he wouldn't talk to me anymore. And then he retained an attorney. So I started talking to the attorney, and the first issue, while we were talking, COVID hit, because it was the end of 2019, the beginning of 20. And so the daughter was with her mother, our client, for pretty much the time it hit, March 2020 through May 2020. And then we developed a schedule that he would follow sometimes, follow not sometimes. And so we were fighting over that visitation schedule. And then there were a lot of delays because of COVID that whole summer. Then he's very slick, very conniving. He knows how to push her buttons. So there was an incident when she was going to pick him up that I would say they provoked her. She went to go pick up her daughter. His new wife said, "I'm not giving you to her." And she blew up. She walked into their house, took the daughter, and left. Meanwhile, they were recording the whole thing. So they went and got a protective order against her. They showed it to the court. The court made her go to anger management classes. She had to finish that. Then it was just all these peripheral issues until finally I said, look, time is going by and we're talking about her anger. We're talking about whether or not he's following the visitation schedule. We need to get focused on why we're here, which is getting custody back to her. And so the court said, okay, you're right. So let's schedule this hearing now. And that's how it came.
Okay. So then I guess our usual question, where is the injustice here, right? That's
right.
But before I get further on that, I want to remind myself to tell people watching, down there below, subscribe, because that's part of how we get the word out about the legal zone. And we want people to hear about these things so that they will have a better understanding about how to handle issues that come up in their situations and how important it is to avoid certain things and other things to be aware of and to not end up where some of our unfortunate guests have ended up. So
yes, thank you.
Subscribe. But all right, the injustice. It does seem, for one, even Corona, okay, COVID stuff, still the court is dragging its feet on this. We have another situation where, all right, she may have acted out in some way, right, Ms. Bryan, but the instigating act would be considered a breach of, what would you call it, the parental responsibilities on his part, right? There's the first family injury. But once again, we have the situation where, okay, that side has managed to manipulate it so that only one injury is being looked at and not both injuries, and not, most importantly, the initial one, what started the whole thing off, and them now kind of playing her.
Right.
So,
And one of the injustices, and again, it's not so much the system, I think it's the people, is this untimely delay. Right. There's no reason why we shouldn't have had this hearing back last year sometime. And the issue with children, whenever you're having cases with children, time is of essence because they're growing up. Right. So it started when she was 5, now she's 9. And maybe she's developed a pattern, or maybe she's accustomed to living with the father.
right, now you're going to run into that problem when you go to court. Well, she has this home and she has her room and this is the school and we don't want to disturb anything.
Right.
What's in the best interest of the child?
And by the way, this is important to know, Dr. Cheney, the times that they were going back and forth to court, the initial judge set a schedule. He said that the schedule was even. The daughter was in a school, and it had come out that Mr. Clark had removed her from the school on his own. And so the judge admonished him for that and said, don't do that again. Well, a few months later, guess what? He did that again. He took her from the school that the judge said do not remove her from and put her in a school in Charles County. And then during the COVID, he put her in another school, and the school has shut down. Everything now is online. He bought her a desktop computer because the schedule was supposed to be with the mother from Friday to Tuesday. So he bought her a desktop, downloaded all the information on the desktop, and said, well, she has to be with us now from Monday to Friday. So you only get Saturday and Sunday because we can't pick up this desktop and take it to your house. So I had filed a motion explaining to the court what he did. And I asked the court to make him buy her a laptop so the schedule can go back to what it was. And of course, we didn't get a hearing on that.
It seems to me that he probably is, well, it seems to me that Mr. Clark really wants Miss Bryant at any cost, and the child may be you may be being used to try to get them back together.
Yeah,
It's
but
really unfortunate.
he's married.
Well, it seems like he still has some kind of vendetta going on
Yeah.
based on what we are hearing. And then if Miss Bryant, when and if Miss Bryant gets married again, I guess it's going to be really interesting still.
Yeah.
Well, she raised, Ms. Bryant raised the point that why she cut off their relationship was he showed this obsessive controlling side.
Yes.
That's part of who he is. Yeah, now I'm going to use not so much to get you back, because as Salon points out, he's married now, but now I'm going to use the child to control you. I'm going to show who still has the power here.
Or as Dr. Cheney always points out, money. He's not paying child support anymore.
How is he paying any support?
He's not.
Well, how is he living? Off of some kind of honorarium?
Oh, you
I
mean
thought that's what she was suggesting.
where he gets his money from?
I mean, yeah,
He
because
gets,
she was
he's
suggesting
he's a firefighter and he works somewhere else.
firefighter.
He has an income, but he doesn't have to pay any of that income to Ms.
Her.
Bryant for child support. As
Yes,
long
but
as,
okay, I would also like to say that uh, men, some men, even though he is married, he could still want her as his quote unquote side piece, as I hear folks saying about women. What about that, John?
Oh, no, I'm not going to argue with you there. That is a possibility that,
we need to have a show on side pieces.
although I will, let me devil's advocate that a moment. That would mean his wife is in on it. Because in other words, she helped with the manipulation she would, according to what Ms. Bryan said, it was his new wife who said, no, we're not giving her back to you. And then Ms. Bryan storms in and takes her. So I'm just going to throw out there, then there's an accomplice here who's willing to play the game. Now, maybe she doesn't know his full game. That, yeah, part of it is so he can set up a little side family thing somewhere else. That would, as Salon says, be an interesting topic for another program. Side
That's
pieces
a Kevin
on there, the legal implications thereof.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. As of now, I think we have a strong case for Ms. Bryan. I think that the new judge that's assigned to this case is going to seek through Mr. Clark. And again, they had an agreement, which is why I opened up the segment with the contract. Even though the best interest of the child is the overall standard with these type of things, one, it's in the best interest of the child for him to at least have equal opportunity with both parents, which she's not getting right now. But also they had this agreement that was put in place, and there's no reason why that agreement should be altered or breached. So we have sort of a contract issue and we have the family law issue.
Mhm.
And I think with those two issues, the court will definitely come down on the side of, not to mention the daughter has siblings that are very close in age. And for the first 5-6 years of her life, she had all this opportunity for that relationship to build with her siblings. So let's put that back to where it was. And I think that the court will agree with us on that. And of
What
course,
about
we would have the follow-up show to let our listeners know.
what about the follow-up comments that Ms. Bryan mentioned about immigration and IRS? She did mention there's a possibility of some violations there. Not that this is part of this case,
Yeah.
but
And I wouldn't know about those because the wife is not a party to this suit. So I wouldn't know anything about that, but it's possible.
yeah.
Yeah, but it does seem that you have, when you go to court salon, you do have a number of strong points. The original agreement was breached. He violated the court's order in terms of not moving the child. I think the idea of course, bringing much more out in the open that the initial, family wrong was committed by him. And then you're saying the siblings, all of these things should be weighing, even if there are circumstances that might say, well, yeah, but she's been in a stable place, why move it? Well, because there are a whole series of other things outweighing that in this situation.
And so the only injustice, because no court has deemed her unfit and no court has denied that things go back to the way they were, it's just been this long delay, which is why listeners should know if they have family issues, jump on it immediately. Don't wait, because the court might make you wait just because of the way things are set up. All righty.
It's a very slow. I mean, that's just the nature of the law. I mean, everything just takes so long.
Yep.
Even in the best of scenarios.
Yeah. So we have some interesting programs lined up. Stay tuned again. subscribe down low. Any questions or concerns, continue to email thelegalzone@remislaw.com. Until next time, you all take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thanks
all.
again, Salon. Have a
Thank
great.
you. All right, you too.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remislaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.